In this video, we're going to take a quick overview of some special education features and services that you're going to experience this year while working with me. So let's go through it. So if we take a look at our continuum of services, your child is going to fall in one of these two realms, particularly either the resource room, okay, or we're going to see the consultant or co-teaching model. In the ICT room, you'll have two teachers in the classroom, one providing the general education instructional delivery for content, and the other kind of looking at the pedagogy or the instructional strategies behind that, how best to deliver it to the neediest learners. In a resource room, you'll have one teacher in the general education classroom, and either on an alternate day basis or on a daily basis, your child will meet with one other teacher to kind of organize themselves, work on their IEP goals, plan, prioritize, and organize for the day ahead. If we go on, I have a screenshot here to show you that the Power School, the use of the online gradebook is very useful. If you're not sure of your login credentials, you could always email or call your child's guidance counselor, and they will always have access to that for you. This way you can check to see the most up-to-date grades in the portal. Sometimes teachers take a little bit longer than others to get those grades in, so always contact the teacher directly of the classroom your child is in if you're concerned. Now, on the IEP, I think it's important to be very mindful of some of these features. So every quarter, the special education teachers confer with either the general education teachers and/or each other to look at your child's progress. And you'll notice that in the goals, we are asked to each quarter rate your child's progress. So for example, in this one, we said this child was progressing satisfactorily on this goal early in the school year. And if we go down to the bottom here, we see that PS, or progressing satisfactorily, says that the student is making satisfactory progress and is expected to achieve the goal by the end of the year. And we go all the way down to progressing inconsistently, where it says the student is making inconsistent progress and may not achieve the goal. So if you see any of these lower end of these goals, it's always good to reach out to the teacher and get some further clarity or feedback. One of the sections of the IEP that I find to be very useful when I'm working with the school psychologist, social worker, as well as even the speech therapist and even the reading teachers, is to look at the psych scores, because they sometimes give us good information that can kind of underlie some of the learning struggles that our students experience. So sometimes we look at different areas such as written expression, working memory, verbal comprehension, passage comprehension, and other different tests to give us a clear indication as to why they may be struggling in certain areas. And from that, we can adjust our expectations on how they should perform on certain tasks. In addition, we can start to work together as a committee to decide what are some good strategies and good accommodations or modifications that may need to be put in place to improve your child's efficacy in that classroom. Now, program modifications typically take place in the classroom, and they are notes to both either the co-teacher and or the general education teacher to help make sure that these are being implemented. When we see testing accommodations, there are certain conditions. Sometimes they're for all tests. Okay, sometimes they're not. So that's good to know the clarity on that. Sometimes you get extended time. Tests may be read to the student. Okay. Certain disabilities exempt students from filling out scantrons because they may make enough errors that it may sway the score of that assessment. So students should be aware of these, and we typically go over them in the beginning of the school year with them. And one of the first things I always start with as students is when they're struggling in a classroom to kind of have them ask questions, to feel out what they're doing, what they're not doing, and what they could be doing. So for example, have them ask questions like, have I studied properly and consistently? Do I ask questions to participate in class? Have I attended extra help regularly? Am I using outside resources such as YouTube, particularly for those students whose working memory and whose reading comprehension is very deficient? Since many of our students are taking Regents classes, New York State provides old Regents exams with answer keys that allow students to practice them. So for example, I always guide my students towards this section since I'm typically in the history classrooms. And for this, I'm going to be looking at the US history section. And here they can get old exams and practice. So they can do that right from the gate and they don't have to wait till June. And it will reduce their anxiety throughout the year. Who to contact when? So for example, here is a photo of me as the resource room teacher, and then we have your child's classroom teacher. So let's go through a couple scenarios, and I just give my particular perspective of when we should be contacting me as the resource room teacher or contacting the classroom teacher. So you're thinking, I'm curious about a missing assignment. You look in the portal and the assignment's missing. Well, first thing, I would actually start off and talk to your child. And this is my terrible representation of them. Okay? So first ask your child, do you have an assignment pad? Do you use your planner? Or are you using your iPad or cell phone and putting it in digitally? How are they recording their assignments? They should have a method and it should be used consistently. So we as the teachers go over these different strategies and methods, and then at home it helps if you can reinforce that as well. So I would first start with them. And then I would go on to the classroom teacher. Maybe it's not in the portal yet. Maybe they have it at home. Maybe it's misplaced. If at that point you still can't rectify the situation, feel free to contact me, and then I can either speak to the student or teacher and provide a little bit further clarity. So now here's a situation where you're not sure if my child's accommodations are being followed. Okay, so you look at the IEP and you notice in those sections what the accommodations are, and you ask your child, hey, are these being followed? And so they may not know, because sometimes they get a little ashamed and nervous about their IEPs, and they're not always fully aware of it. So you can always reach out to the classroom teacher and ask, is my child having their tests read? Is she allowed extra time? Is he being allowed breaks? So that is always a good place to start. And if you want further information on what your child is entitled to, if you have specific accommodation questions, if they're helpful, etc., then you can always reach out to me in that situation. But I would start first with your child, then the classroom teacher. So I'm fearful about my child's grades. So grades are dependent upon the assessments, the work ethic of your child in the particular classroom. So you can then first ask your child the questions we listed above. Are you studying? What study methods are you using? How often do you study? Is it in a noisy environment? Are you listening to music? Next one, are you going to extra help? Are you seeing the teacher consistently? Are you seeing them regularly? Do you ask questions in class? Okay. Once you gather that data, you can go one of two ways. If you feel like your child is insufficient in their strategies and their skills, reach out to me. Let me know, hey, my child is not using these strategies at home. Can you reinforce this in the resource room? If you want to know if it's being done in the general education classroom, and if there's anything that they are not doing or are doing that's hindering their grades, then again, reach out to the classroom teacher since they see your child on a daily basis in that classroom. Resource room teachers do not. So there's other questions. So typically, I like to think of it like this. If your questions and concerns relate to the IEP, you can always reach out to me first. Okay? If there's a particular conflict or something that you're not sure how to rectify with regards to your child and maybe a classroom teacher, okay? Again, you can reach out to me and I can work on those strategies with your child. Questions regarding grades, okay, work or assignments, tests, etc., please direct those towards the classroom teacher, because as a resource room teacher, I am not in that classroom. If it's a co-taught classroom, then yes, I'm in there, and then I can serve both purposes. You can reach out to me for both of those types of concerns.
Yeah.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Bye-bye. Understand, the buh or the bye? Bye-bye.
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 Yeah, I'm just about to go.
Bye-bye.